right. Yep, it is recording. All right. So let's go ahead and just deal with a few questions that's going to be the practice exam. So we'll just call this practice exam 1. This also means that this text will all be online by the time we get out of this class, which is good. Okay. So basically, the practice exam has about the same stuff that we have been talking about so far. Basically, traces for one, pre and post conditions as the second one. The big question, is what will be the format of the test. I contacted the lab people, the lab technicians, and there won't be any space for this class to take the test in the lab. So we'll just be doing it on paper. Okay. You don't need to bring any Scantrons, but you might want to bring, I would say about 5 or 6, just regular binder paper. Yep.
Can I use my laptop?
No, because how are you going to turn it in, physically?
Well, I mean, I can do it on the paper, and then you said we can use anything for the test, right?
But when you're doing it in the classroom, I cannot assume everybody will have access to a laptop computer. So that means I cannot let people with a laptop computer to use the laptop during the test.
Carrying around your book or notes or whatever.
Well, it's because I cannot assume everyone will have access to a laptop computer, and having a laptop computer does have certain advantages because you can search through stuff a lot faster than going through paper. But since I cannot assume everybody will have a laptop computer, I cannot allow the use of a laptop computer during the test.
Okay, but my notes aren't on paper. So
Sorry?
my notes aren't on paper, so I can't bring in my notes on paper.
You can print it out.
Okay.
Okay, but I really cannot allow the use of electronic media during the test. So can you print it out?
I can try.
Okay.
Because I don't have a printer, so I guess I can go to the LRC and print it out.
You can go to the LRC and print it out, or if you have problem accessing a printer, I can see if I can find the printer for you, and print it out for less expensive, not as much as they charge in the lab. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. So by the same token, you cannot use your cell phones. Okay. If you have a smartphone that can go online, with a web browser feature, you also cannot use it. In other words, if the test is going to be in the classroom and not in the lab, you are limited to only printed material. You cannot use electronic, tools with you. And since I tell you this 1 week ahead of time, make preparations for that. The class notes can all be printed. Okay, they have both the PDF and the HTML format, so you can print it out. I think it is probably best, since the question or the point was raised right now, it is probably best for me to notify the entire class by using the news topic, just so that everybody, make sure everybody remember that. So exam 1 will not be online. Okay. This means that I have to place a restriction as to what type of material can be used. Only printed material can be utilized during the test. No laptop, smartphone, and other electronic devices can be used during the test. Okay, you can, however, bring in any printed material or handwritten to help you during the test. All right, so that's good. Post to forum. So now, everybody in the class should have a copy of this message. I personally prefer to be, for you guys to take the test in the lab. It's easier for me to grade. I would not have to worry about, penmanship. But since I cannot, that's, something that I cannot change. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with practice exam 1. The first thing that you will have to do, or most likely that you will have to do, is to trace an algorithm. Okay, so the type of algorithm that you have to trace is not going to be much different from what we have done in the class. It will be very similar in terms of the complexity and the nature, and you just have to remember to follow the rules. Okay, to follow the same notation, the format that we use in the class. So here we have. Let me just give you a sample of what type of question may be asked. Okay, so here's line 1. Line 1 says x gets 0. Line 2, while y is less than 5, do. Line 3, y gets, okay, obviously I missed something here. Line 2, y gets 0 as well. Line 3, line 4, y gets y plus 1, y plus x. And then line 5, x gets x plus 1. Line 6, and while. So something along this line, okay? Maybe a little bit more complex, maybe a little bit less complex. But this would be about the same type of stuff that we have dealt with in the class. Now, the question is, without a spreadsheet, how are you going to trace it? Okay, the best way to do it is to bring in paper that already has vertical grids as well as vertical lines as well as horizontal lines. So grid type of paper would be very helpful. If you don't have grid type paper, you can always bring in just regular binder paper, but bring in a ruler so that it will help you align the columns. You can draw your own vertical lines as columns. Is that going to be okay with you guys? So we have to go back. Graphing paper would be best. Okay, anything that will help you line up the columns would be really good. The nice thing about using a piece of paper is the trace is very unlikely to exceed 1 page. So you basically use 1 page per question, and you should be fine. There will be no scrolling. You don't have to worry about how do I split the spreadsheet into one half and the other half so you can scroll independently. It's all just on one single piece of paper. How many people think that you might need some help doing the lining and making sure that it is all properly formatted? Because I can print it out too. I can just pre-format everything and print out the paper that already has the columns pre-formatted. The big question in that case is my column and also my line spacing, is it going to be too small for you guys? That's the question. If you guys do your own ruler thing, then you can basically select the right width for your own writing style. So do you guys want me to give you paper that is already formatted, or do you want to just use your own paper and do it your way?
On paper.
Do your own, okay, use your own paper. I will probably just bring in binder paper then, just in case someone forgets or did not bring enough. Okay. All right. So in this case, I will probably have to trace it, just using text, which is fine at this point. Okay. What are the several standards or conventions that we use in the class for tracing algorithms? Can someone let me just enumerate all those things, because I do want to make sure that everybody understand what you have to do when you trace an algorithm. How many columns do we need, or what kind of columns do you need in a trace? Okay, so let's take a look at the columns. You definitely need one line number column. Okay, you need the comments in this case because we have conditions to evaluate. What else do we need?
Variables.
One column per variable. Okay, so one column per variable. Well, in this case, we have x and y, so we have 2 columns corresponding to the variables. What about rows? When we trace an algorithm, what rows do we expect? What rows are mandatory? Okay, there's a pre-column, pre-row. So pre indicates the pre-condition. Very good. And usually that is given by me. Okay, tag will provide that. If not provided, assume nothing about the variables. What else? Well, if there's a pre, we can mention the post right away. So the post indicates the end of the trace. Okay. On top of these things, what else do we do with the rows of a trace? What does each row represent? Each row represents the execution of a line. Okay, so each row represents the execution of a line in the pseudocode. Okay, very good. When do I put something into a cell? If this is a spreadsheet or a table, when do I put something into a particular cell? When the variable is changed, updated. Okay, so a cell must have a value when a variable is updated. Yep.
Is this practice today going on Moodle?
Yes. It is going to be. This is all going to be stored on Moodle, so you will be able to access it at the end of the class. Yep. But this is really nothing. This is nothing new. This is all the stuff that we have been dealing with all. I guess have 1/3 of a semester long. Okay. So what we want to do now is to go through the trace. Now, how do you think I'm going to grade the traces that you guys turn in? How will I assign points? In other words, what type of trace will get full points? Traces that have all those and are correct. Just having those does not mean the trace is correct, okay? So the trace has to be entirely correct to get all the points. What kind of, yes?
Partial credit?
Here comes the touchy question. Will there be partial credit? Well, I kind of feel that if I don't give you partial credit, if someone gives me a trace that is almost entirely correct, except with the evaluation of one condition, it is wrong. Okay, instead of true, it is false, and branched in the wrong way, and so the final answer is wrong. I don't feel that I should be taking all the points away. Okay, I feel that partial credit should be assigned based on how much that person has demonstrated, or of he or she already understand and can apply. But then the question is, but there's demonstration of how one person can track assignment statements. There's demonstration of how one person can track a loop. When there's a condition, what to do with the condition. At the end of a loop, does that person know that we have to go back to the beginning, and so on and so forth. So the assignment of the points, will be entirely based on what I think is the difficulty of that particular concept. Some of the easier concepts will not have point values associated. In other words, being able to indicate that x ends up with a value of 0 after line 1 will probably have no point values associated. Okay, so that's how partial credit is going to be assigned. It is going to be based on more tricky stuff, such as at this point here on line 3, does that person know where we should go? Depending on whether y is really less than 5 or not. At the very last line, maybe I will assign partial credit and say, does that person know that we have to go back to line 3 after the last line in the body of the loop? So that's the sort of thing that I will assign partial credit to. And I will also assign credit to having everything being correct. In other words, there may be certain locations where that person has demonstrated every single thing that I'm looking for, but somehow the overall trace is still wrong. So in that case, that person will still lose some points because the overall trace is wrong. But we'll be getting a lot of partial credit because each individual piece is still correct. Okay? So that's how partial credit